over that 10-year period. So, if that's the case, we've got some really serious problems coming up in our agriculture sector. And so, that's kind of where this, we didn't really get into that the other night, but that's my concern, is that we need to start looking at some different industries and some different avenues to broaden our tax base besides oil and gas and agriculture.
Yep.
So, Taylor, you guys both have ag backgrounds in your families and that kind of thing. So you hear what Mr. Rice is saying over here. Obviously, it's got to be of a concern, but now that you're on the commission and the city side of it, what did you see in that conversation the other night that you guys need to make sure we're prepared for?
Well, and I think Jim touched on a lot of the excellent, concerns that we have. One of the things that a lot of guys like Justin and I, when we were running for office, were focusing on was diversity of our different industrial sectors, because for so long in this area, oil and gas was it, and agriculture, and livestock. And the biggest problem from growing up on a farm south of Plains, I remember, 5 years ago, whenever I was, still kind of looking at what I was going to do for the rest of my life. I hadn't opened technology for all yet. I had a discussion with my father, who has, owned a farm and worked on a farm his entire life. And, my father just finally told me, he said, son, there's no money in farming anymore. You can't make a living doing it unless you already have, thousands of acres. It's impossible because you're fighting a war of attrition. And that's a terrifying thought, because when you look at Seward County as a whole, agriculture and livestock is still one of our main draws now that oil and gas is gone. And so I think that's incredibly alarming to think that we might lose that. I would like to think that we are an ideal candidate of a county and a city for manufacturing and logistical infrastructure, because we're dead center in the United States of America. So the fact that we have an airport, a rail system, and 2 major highways, you would think if we can start to appeal to some of these companies that make products, swing sets, wheelbarrows, things like that, that if we're making them here, you're going to have the same shipping and logistical time to go anywhere in the United States of America with ease. Now, one thing we touched on in the joint meeting was the possibility of working with this Think ICM company. And what they are is they're financial consultants that basically help analyze a county and city and look at what all their main draws are in economically, and try to help us figure out kind of an analysis and a plan of what to do if, for example, and knock on wood that this will never happen, but if National Beef were to close, or if we were to lose Conestoga, one of our, top 5 providers in the area. And so what's really cool about this program is basically it's a workshop and seminar, but then they kind of go through every single thing in our area and try to help us put in plans that'll last, 10, 20, 30 years down the road of, okay, even if we lose one of these industries 10 years from now, we already have a plan in place for how to aggressively pursue an alternative. So I think it's excellent to start having these discussions now, because if we wait until we're possibly losing one of our largest providers, then we're going to be screwed really quickly. And so hopefully we can figure out some new industries to help bring in. And like I said, I feel like Seward County and Liberal are just an absolutely ideal place for a lot of industries to be placed. We just gotta get our name on the tip of their tongue and try to get them in here.
I was interviewing a candidate for our opening at our church for a pastor, and they're from Georgia, and I told them, well, here's a good thing. If you move to Liberal, you'll be equal distance from the Atlantic and the Pacific.
That's exactly right.
You get to either one just as easy as the other one. You're not favoring. You're too far over to one side. But we are dead in the middle, and we do have access. And I know that there's been a cooperative effort to try to get highway transportation improved and get us up to 4 lanes, and we've seen some of that improvement in Seward County here in the last year or two. And so we've seen
that was actually a very big topic at the Joint Commission meeting, was the 4-lane highway and how we should decide to lobby from here on out, because I think all of us know, sadly enough, that we're probably never going to get that 4-lane all the way into Liberal.
Well, we're not going to get it without the lobbying. So what did you guys talk about? How do you guys how are you going to approach that?
Well, they had the discussion about whether they wanted to continue to push for a 4-lane from Mullinville this way, or maybe go to I guess a Super 3 is what they call it, which is 3 lanes with a passing lane down the middle, and then shoulders on both sides. And I think the majority of people there decided that probably the 3-lane was the best way to go, because it cost, I think they said, $1 million a mile compared to $4 million with the other with the 4-lane. And so, but they did agree that we needed to be working with Dodge and Liberal to get 4-lane to Mullinville.
Yep.
And then, the only thing that I was kind of concerned about is we've already got a 4-lane started out east of town here, and what are they going to do with that? Right now it's kind of a hazard coming across there in the dark at night, and try to figure out all the lines and, especially.
Well, it's such an abrupt shift right there from 2 to 4.
And so, I don't know what they're going to do. I would kind of like to see them continue to work on getting that 4-lane down to the river bridge anyway.
That'd be phenomenal.
And may even across the bridge, because if you've ever come down on the east side of the bridge at night, I always hope that somebody's in front of me and they know where they're going, because it's a little rough to figure out where all those marks take you. But anyway, so I don't know. There was some problems there, but I know the group decided that probably a 3-lane was kind of what they were going to propose to the legislature and to KDOT. And if we could just figure out a way to keep the legislature's fingers out of the till of KDOT and quit using that to balance their own dang budget. There would be plenty of money in the KDOT budget to go ahead and fund the roads like they need to be funded, and we could get things done. But it seems like that's their slush fund. So every year, why they take out $200 or $300 million out of it,
and it's frustrating because we were told in this area that everything's been budgeted for. It's finally going to happen. It's been promised for a long time, just to have the rug pulled out from underneath us again. And really, one of the main things. Oh,
I got you.
We'll be right back.
Keep talking.
One of the main things that the main mentality behind it was, okay, well let's go ahead and lobby to get the 4-lane to Mullinville fully completed, and then that way it creates a larger pipeline of traffic flow into the area. And the reason that we'll be working with Garden and Dodge so closely is because getting that 4-lane into that area is going to create a bigger pipeline, and then we can all focus on a Super 3 from that point on into our communities to help increase traffic flow and lower the fatality rate. Because realistically, the thing that surprises me about why our highway down here is not a bigger deal to the state of Kansas. It is, in my understanding, the #1 fatality traveled road in the United States of America, and our stretch is exceedingly dangerous. So it does surprise me that there isn't more of a push at a state level to try to accomplish that, because you would think that lives are more important than a lot of the other things that we're spending money on at a state level. But it never ceases to amaze me how we choose to allocate our funds up there.
Well, when you fly into Liberal from Topeka all the time, you don't notice that 54 highway.
No, you don't. You definitely do not. That was another topic, though, that I thought was really exciting while we're waiting for Earl to get back. It would have been agenda item number 5, was actually an airport update from Debbie Gitsky. And it sounds like everything is going exceedingly well out at the airport. And our numbers are looking fantastic. The rates and fares are staying nice and cheap out there. And Debbie even mentioned that if the airport continues to gain momentum and things continue to go really well, that down the line we may look at being able to have other providers like American Airlines and other airlines that can start using us as a refueling hub and start having their airlines come through here. So I know that one of the things I'm most excited about our trip to Washington, D.C. is that we get to fly out of Liberal, and that'll be my first flight out of Liberal. And from everything I've seen, it seems like the inside of the airport looks phenomenal now. The airlines themselves, they look terrific on the inside of it. And I cannot get over the fact that it is $140 round trip if you book in advance to fly from Liberal to Denver, because for somebody like me, that is worth its weight in gold. I would much rather pay $140 to go both ways than have to drive 6 hours up and 6 hours back, because that is not necessarily the most scenic stretch of land that's enjoyable to drive.
Well, I don't think you can drive that for $70 one way.
No,
no. And plus
unless you're in a
the
Prius.
additional time, So while we're talking about that, to show you some positive things that did come out of that we were out to the museum. Carolyn and I were out to the museum the other night, and then a couple of the pilots were out there wandering around, and they checking out the museum, and they mentioned to Carolyn that they were at the airport that evening or the night before, I guess about 11:30, and they didn't have a way to get to their hotel, and so they finally had to
call the sheriffs.
The police department to get there. So anyway, we've mentioned that fact to Debbie, and I think that's been resolved, and I think they're going to get them a car and leave the keys in the lockbox or
Yep.
something. But, that was something that positive to come out of that meeting within, a
Yeah.
few minutes.
Well, and I thought it was hilarious too, because I think it was Rock Ormiston that was sitting back there that, he's in with Pinnacle that had put in some of the new hotels. And towards the end of the meeting, he said that one of those new hotels will be offering a shuttle from that airport. He got that solved pretty dang quick up there. So it was pretty awesome to see that.
And I apologize, I had a new device. You've probably seen these things. They hold your cell phone, and I charged it this afternoon, just got it in, said 24 hours. It lasted about 12 minutes. So, new
great.
technology, I'm working on it. So sorry about the change of angle there. And that, when you talk about, you were on highways earlier, I talked with governor's candidates coming in, and I've also talked with Representative Shannon and Senator Estes about even looking at 54 and maybe going to extend the turnpike.
Yeah.
I'd pay $5.
Yeah.
I'd pay $10 to know that I was safe and driving on 4-lane to Wichita, and all that other traffic would probably do the same. So we have to look at all the options. And I appreciate you guys looking at how to address it. We can't solve it here. We're going to have a coalition with the rest of the state to see the benefit of having traffic flowing through southwest Kansas and into the rest of Kansas. And so hopefully they'll keep looking at that. You guys
Indeed.
also addressed some other issues. Since we're talking business, we might jump around a little bit and talk a little bit about economic development. That's something that we're all interested in. We've seen several new businesses, retail businesses, and you guys talked about the possibilities should we lose somebody, but how about we keep gaining some? That seems to be a positive thing. So what would you guys say you felt about the possibilities of growth?
I thought, it was a good discussion for years. We've always had an economic development committee, but, it doesn't seem like that ever much comes of it. And so that was part of the discussion. And one of the things that caught my attention was when Dr. Traska started talking about these incubator program, getting a small store, an empty store on Main Street, and converting that over into some kind of a retail business or something. And I know in Greensburg, after the tornado, that's how they kind of rejuvenated their Main Street. Was they had an incubator program, and I'm not just exactly sure how it worked, but I think that would be something that and I don't know that retail business, more retail business is exactly the answer, but there were a lot of ideas that were passed around. Somebody mentioned the fact about some trolley wheels that the beef processing industry used, that, and if you look around, between Louisville and Garden and Dodge, there's nobody around that's got any more beef packing houses than we've got.
Yep.
I think, and I thought at the time, I didn't mention it that evening, but, the wind farms, and we've talked about that in the past, is, maybe putting a supply house for parts and what have you, there. And if we ever get our wind farm built, we'll get the towers in here for the one that we've got for northern Seward County planned.
Yep.
Between Seward County and Meade County, we've got the contract signed, and all we're waiting on is the power lines to get here to carry the energy out. And so, I don't know. We keep working on that, and we've had that agreement with Meade County for, I don't know, I guess probably 3-4 years.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So
Well,
Taylor, as Taylor's going to kick in here and share some economic development. See, Taylor, eventually you won't have to keep notes. See, this is what happens when you do it for
When
a
you've been in
long time.
Once
You've
I'm a
been in it
tenured
for
veteran.
40 years, you kind of,
The whole reason I like to keep notes is because, it lets me have some of the specifics like this, because this was Traska's wording on the incubation he was talking about. He called it a Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship, and that's what caught my ears the most, because I thought that was a really awesome thing. Being a small business owner myself that's an entrepreneur, the idea of basically trying to create this cultured environment where we're not only trying to get exceedingly large industries that are already developed, but trying to create an environment in Liberal where we're open to entrepreneurship and where we try to make it to where the little guys can succeed and fill up the town with all of these small businesses as well. And a lot of the things they talked about as a group, because it was Commissioner Carlisle's agenda item, and he kind of touched on the idea of possibly kind of sharing economic development between all the taxing entities. And that was kind of hit and miss. Some of the taxing entities thought, okay, that sounds like something that could work, and some of the others thought, like the school district, for example, and I can understand their mentality on it, thought, well, why would we want to put in on that of paying a salary? So that makes sense. But really, some of the main keys out of it was that we all want to work together to try to fill the county and the city and the surrounding areas with more economic opportunities. And I know that we have a lot of bright, brilliant kids here going here to high school. And a lot of these kids are going to go straight to SCCC. And if we had programs at SCCC and we had an environment down at City Hall and at the county to where these kids, if they had an amazing idea of how to start a business, we have that small business bureau down there, to where we could literally try to help them get started here in Liberal without ever having to go to a 4-year, or having that mentality of, we have everything you need here to be able to succeed. I think it would help a lot, because I will always hold to this, that small businesses are always going to be the backbone of communities and counties, because they're the ones that sponsor all of the local events and keep all of the events thriving and keep everything moving forward in that way. They usually are always going to employ local people that are already in the tax base that may have a harder time finding a job than people that are brought in by big industry. And usually they are more liable on their taxation. They usually don't qualify for a lot of the incentives, so they're paying 100% of their taxes day one. So I thought it was a very productive conversation. I can't wait to see between the first meeting and the second meeting where we get on this as a group.
You wonder where the ideas come from, and attending that joint meeting the other evening, and then yesterday morning I went out to the Air Museum, and they've got a program that they're doing out there. I think there's 4 segments to it, and that was the second one. I missed the first one, but it's called Discovery.
Yep.
And it was just mind-boggling of all the ideas and the thoughts that came from the people that were there about the possibilities of what the museum needed and what the city needed and all of that, and I think, on this deal, as we look and research for some kind of a business, there's people out there watching this thing right now that have some ideas.
Yeah.
All we need to do is get them to, drop a note on their little Facebook page or YouTube channel and say, hey, check this one out,
Or go to a county commission meeting, commission meeting, come to a city commission meeting, just get involved, share your ideas.
It might pan out and it might not, but if we don't know about it, we can't do anything about it.
That's
so,
exactly right.
That's where the public needs to get involved in these things, because it's not up to me and Taylor and the rest of us to do this. We're here to represent the people of the county and the city.
Indeed.
And so, we need to hear from you.
And I can say some things that I don't have to worry about because I'm not elected and you can't kick me out of a board. So I'm just going to say that the economic development idea is, you got to be kind of careful, because like taxpayers would have to say, am I paying money for education that is directed towards economic development? They may not think that is the right way to connect their dollars on why they're being taxed.
And that was brought up. That's specifically what you just said during economic development, because the school board brought that up, was that they don't feel like money going towards the school and college should go into joint economic development, because it should stay with the school and college and benefit them.
Right. So now you're down to 2 entities, which are you two, your organization and yours. But you have to know the history, because also I believe, and Mr. Rice, you can say whether this is accurate or not, but there were shared costs between the health department and the economic development at one time, and they both agreed, you take one and handle it, and you take the other and handle it. And is that not how we got to where we're at?
That's right. I don't remember how many years ago it was, but we had an agreement with the city, and I don't remember whether it was written on a piece of paper or whether it was just a handshake agreement, but they agreed to take over the economic development. And we agreed to take over the health department, and since that time, the city's been in charge of economic development, and we've maintained the health department.
So you see, it would be easy if you just walk in today You just walked into liberal, and you hear this idea of sharing the cost of economic development. Sounds great, but what you have to remember is, but then you have to share the cost of the health department, because
Yes.
it goes both ways. So knowing the history is what's important, and that's why these joint meetings are important, because these guys get to come together, sit at the same table, share some knowledge back and forth, and share the concerns. So it'll be interesting to see.
I think they talked about a budget amount of $172,000, wasn't it? Something like
Yeah,
that
because
was
they
about
thought
the
the
economic
total
development
cost
budget.
of JEDC with the employees calculated in and everything was about 172 a year. And so, truth be told, I don't necessarily, from my position as a commissioner, think it's something that needs split between the two, as much as we just need to revamp almost a totally different mentality and approach to how we handle it. Because, the idea of cost sharing, it's fine. It goes right into what you said, though. If we had to say, hey, you guys got to take half of that 172, and they say, hey, you're going to take half the health department, I guarantee you we're not going to be nearly as happy as them. Yeah.
So think about this, Taylor, and Jim. What's going on at the Air Museum right now? They have some facilitator coming in and looking at the whole program. Why not do that? Why not consider that with economic development? Why not look at bringing somebody in and having a seminar and saying, look, this is how you can form a group. This is how you can set a direction, and this is how this part of the pie can work.
See, and I feel like that part of JEDC actually went back to the co-op solution of thinking about working on all of us gaining a better understanding of how to better prepare our community overall economically. So I'm a pretty big fan of trying to see if we can go down this road with Think ICM, because I think if all of us get this kind of training and we all have a better understanding of how the big picture works, then it may present us with the overall better solution and idea for JEDC, because then we'll all be on a better level of understanding about it.
And I know that there were some costs involved with this ICM. There's always going to be. You don't get this stuff for free.
No.
But how did you guys feel about that? Do you think that would be beneficial to the community, or do you think that is something?
I think it would be, and what he kind of run by us out there that day was about, the cost as compared to the amount of return we would get on our investment of idle funds. And, there's a great amount of idle funds by the time you collect the taxes until they're dispersed. Some of them's right away quick, but some of them are long term.
Well, and it wasn't too bad, because we're only looking at $2,500 per taxing entity, and they said that of course, so they have 5 board members, we have 5 board members. They basically said that it doesn't limit to that, so we can have our city manager, city financial director, they can have April Warden and some of their other county personnel, and it doesn't really raise the cost. So to think of the county spending $2,500 and the city spending $2,500 for a program like this, to me, seems like a very mediated cost.
I mean, the facts are that's little or nothing compared to what you could get out of a group like that, and the savings and the discussion and a direction. More importantly, a direction. And so I think that would be, just as a community member, I think that would be something definitely to look at.
Absolutely.
And Taylor, we're in the day and age where you can do things on video. What's to say that they can't record those things and share those things and do them where we all can see them, and they get more input, because someone can offer something right on this, just like we've received right here doing these, just like you guys. Maybe you ought to talk with those guys and say, hey, while you're doing this, can we throw it on social media so that the community and pop it out there? And look, I'm a more information, not less information kind of guy, and I know these guys are also feel that way. They want to keep you informed, and that's why they're here today. But just
what I've noticed that I love the most is that before we ever did this first video between you and I thought it was going to be a flip of a quarter, basically, to see if people were going to be positive and utilize the information that we were giving them in a positive way, or if it was just going to be another venue for people to kind of attack you and attack I, or kind of be negative. What I've been really thrilled about is a lot of the people that watch these videos that have gotten back a hold of me never had a fluent understanding of how the city even operated. And so I think what you just said is exactly right. I think if we can not only share this, but maybe even possibly stream the next joint commission meeting, the more of this that we can connect with the community and not the clientele base, but the constituents that put us into office to represent them, the better, because this transparency movement that we've been having in Liberal has been working out exceedingly well. So I'm very excited about it.
See, one of the big differences is when they get a bad email, they delete it. I print it. When I'm called an idiot, I put it in the paper. But, so that's one of the differences. But, so you guys also talked a little bit about cleanup. This is a big deal because, gosh, we've taken it on the chin with some of the storms. We've had downed trees, we've had ice, we had a bad year when it comes to all of that stuff. We had another dry winter, and so fires and tree damage is probably going to continue. So what kind of ideas did you guys come up with on some ways to maybe beautify and clear up some of the tree situations?
Well, I know one of the things I thought that was discussed that was extremely beneficial is not only looking at trying to get everything else cleaned up and get all of this. A lot of the trees are in city right-of-ways, so a lot of it's going to fall on the city to get all that cleaned up. What I thought was really cool is they talked about working with the K-State research group to not only when we pull the trees out to get them out and get them cleaned up, immediately plant new ones. That way we can get kind of more beautification out of also a cleanup effort. So I thought that was terrific and definitely something that needs done. What was your take on that part of it, Jim?
I think that was, they didn't really want to go on to private property to remove those trees. But, if it's kind of like a cleanup day, I think, or a cleanup week or whatever you want to call it. But anyway, or a month or, but if they have dead trees or, shrubs or something that they wanted to get rid of, perhaps pile them out by the curb. And I don't know, we need to probably do a little more work on that before we actually tell them to start piling them out there. But
because anyway, we were trying to figure out how to better do it without, one of the ideas that we were kind of pondering that I brought up was there are companies that buy junk wood. The companies that make wood chips for gardens, that make particle board, things like that. Now, one of the things that was brought up is it's very selective because some of the trees are just junk trees. There's nobody that's going to use it.
If it's good enough, I know a guy that might build something out of it.
There you go. There you go. That's what I'm talking about. But it's definitely, they pointed out that there are certain places here in town where if you drive down them, and actually the day after the meeting I did, man, there are 20, 40 dead trees all along one area that are just, basically 20-foot tall stumps. So it definitely is something that needs looked at, and I think once we get that accomplished, it's definitely going to make Liberal look like a much nicer place to live.
So, first of all, I want to say thanks to both organizations that worked together last year on removing, and the county and the city working together, volunteers from the college. I mean, it was a community-wide effort to help clean up, or else we would still look very, very bad if they didn't all pitch in and help us get that cleaned up. So thank you to everybody. They set an example. They set the bar high moving forward. And so we kind of know what may happen this year, and hopefully it doesn't, but if it does, at least we know we have a pattern on how to address it. So I want to thank everybody that helped with that. And, one of the things that came up, and maybe we ought to check with and get Dr. Traskian on one of these, but there was this walking deal with some sidewalking and connections that came up. Did you guys have any thoughts on that?
I called it the Campus Kansas Avenue Crosswalk Project.
Well, there you go.
Well, basically what they were discussing is the fact
First
that
you have to label it.
That's exactly right. We have to create labels. So basically the first thing that they were touching on is that if you go out there very early in the morning, very late at night, I guess there's entire groups of students from the university there that as a group run across Main Street to go over and eat at Freddy's and Subway and all the restaurants. And so Dr. Traska had touched on that they'd prospected doing an overpass and found it to be horribly economically inefficient. And so basically what they were discussing is since we're doing beautification on Main Street anyway to make everything look nicer, that we needed to look at putting in a crosswalk from directly where the sidewalk leads in front of the college all the way across Main Street, and basically putting, it's not a stoplight, but basically putting an overhanging light that only activates when there are students there that hit the button that need to get across the road safely. That way these kids weren't risking their safety getting across the road.
And I don't think at that place you have extended the new, let's just say the new stone features through there. So I think you still have some room to work there on that, and not have to redo or rework some of the area that you've already had. What's the county side on the project?
Just a little personal experience. I come in that way. I live out north of town, and I come in that way, sometimes 2 or 3 times a day. And a lot of times I'll come in and there's, pedestrians trying to get across the street and dodge the traffic. And they're all along that area up there, from Dairy Queen clear down to, Meade Lumber or past. And, the other day we came in and there was somebody that was out in the middle of that rock pile.
Yep.
and they were stumbling around and trying to get across there, so I think it would be something that would be, it would be well used and probably increase the safety quite a bit. So I think it's worthwhile to continue to pursue that.
I agree.
And I think somebody mentioned from the school board the other evening that they have those, I think they've got some stop signs, some of those automatic things that are not going to be needed because they've taken them out from the old schools. And so, they talked about, repurposing them and we could use some of them there. So I think, that was another positive thing for it. But I think it'd be good and it's needed really bad.
I completely agree.
When you're talking about that stretch up there too, I just throw this out, both of you guys, not looking for an answer here, but just, if you drive up there, you're going to notice we have some of the street lights are on the outside, then they jump and they're in the median for a little while, for a block or two, and then they're back to the outside up once you cross Tucker. And
we like to switch it up.
Yeah. What happened is one guy decided one thing, and then somebody else the next time decided to do it different. But consistency, the downtown streetscape looks beautiful, and they're talking about, and that project has been extended out with the lights now. Had to go all the way. It goes all the way to Pine now.
Yep.
And stretching out north. So just you can't use that kind of street lighting because you've got a big median and a huge road up there, but you might just look and see if there's something on consistency in the lighting and just the presentation, just so that when you're driving, it looks like we meant to do it.
Yeah.
As opposed to they.
They slapped it in at the last second.
Well, different things have happened over the years, and it just look at it. Maybe just me. Is it just me? You let me know. It might be just me. But just let us know what you think about that. You guys already addressed some airport updates, so we won't have to hit on that again. And
which, by the way, fly at a Liberal. It's fantastic. Excellent airport out there.
Oh, and there's a special going on right now.
Yes, there is.
So look for those special rates. You can go to, I believe, cityofliberal.net, and there's a button on it there. If you go to our website, there's a click that'll take you right to it. So either way you get there, look for those special rates because if you're going to fly, you got to go through Denver anyway. So that gets you to Denver and gets you on from there. So let's look at some of the other things that you guys talked about. Sometimes there's some accomplishments that happens that's not necessarily on the agenda. People get together and they start talking. You guys were in the room, and the meeting can only cover so many things, and you got to get cut off, got to get people home. So what conversations did you hear, or what sideline thing did you hear, Jim, or maybe that you participated with, that you think, this is something that I think came out pretty good, that might be something for us to look at?
Well, when you get right down to it, I thought every one of those 12 or 13 items, how many ever there were, I thought each one of those were discussed and talked about really well, and there was a great deal of interest in it. So, I was really pleased with the way that meeting went. And of course, it had been a long time since, it had been years since the city and the county and school board and college had met. And as a matter of fact, I don't ever remember, that I wouldn't say they never have, but you'd have to go back years. And I know that's the first joint meeting that the city and the counties had in I believe 5 years.
Well, they did have one last year in the fourth quarter, and it was kind of a preliminary to this. But I was there, and it was a totally different tone in that meeting, because a lot of the I think it was due kind of to the city's behalf, because the incumbents that were in were already voted out, and so there just wasn't nearly as much open communication, participation from everybody involved. Because if I remember right, that one lasted an hour and a half, and we were almost in there for 3 hours. I mean, it was a heck of a long meeting. But I go with Jim on that. I thought one of the topics that we haven't touched on that I thought we really got to figure this out is daycare. Because when Wanda Covert, who's an amazing lady, she works for the Seward County Health Department, she's the one that does all the inspections for all of the daycares in this area. When she was discussing everything, it really starts to paint this picture where you realize, okay, the reason our unemployment rate is so drastically low, which is a detriment to bringing in new industry, because I can't tell you how many businesses I've spoke with where I'm like, hey, do you realize, that we're a tenth of your operating cost if you guys move here, and they say, you don't have anybody to work in our facility. You realize how many spouses would get back into the workforce if they had adequate and safe childcare available? And what we realized during this meeting is we are literally designated as a daycare drought zone. To where we have so little daycare facilities compared to cities of comparable size that we're actually considered an area of drought in that facet. And so hopefully we can figure out, I'll tell you what though, when they were going over the regulations for these places, now keep in mind, these are our children, so you want strict regulations. But when they're going over the regulations for this, it's no wonder that we have so few. Because you're talking, you add in one kid of a certain age, well now, holy crap, you have to change your entire facility. And you're talking about in the backyard, I want to say it was 30 square feet per child. Well, all of a sudden that starts to add up. If you have 12 children, you better have a big backyard, and things like that. So I thought the daycare was something that we were all very interested in trying to figure out a solution to. What I love too is the conversations that took place the second the meeting was adjourned were just as productive. Everybody was still kind of in the mentality of thinking about a lot of this and discussing some more things in specific detail, and you could just tell that everybody there was very willing and very happy to be working together and trying to kind of get on the same page about things.
Roger just pitched in right away to say that when it comes to daycare, a YMCA will take care of that.
Roger, good to see you, man.
But there was one thing that come to mind on that, and I believe Dr. Traska mentioned a little bit, but about a maker's center. Mm-hmm. And
a maker's
if you don't know what that is, and the reason I know about that and had a little experience when we were in Phoenix, they have one of those, and it's a huge thing. It's a building that you can go there and make whatever you want to make, and it doesn't make any difference if it's knitting or if it's welding or about anything you can imagine, and they furnish the supplies, usually, or you can take your own. But anyway, I guess that they have kind of started that out here, and then I don't know exactly what happened, but I thought for a long time that would really be neat because you could go there and do woodworking, if you wanted to. Of course, the place that is located has got all the equipment to do that, and I just thought that would really be, something that the community could use. You might want to go once a week or once a month, or might want to go every day. But
Absolutely.
I think that's something that we could kind of work toward.
I'm going to pose these guys a question, and I'm going to hop out and grab a cord because I'm
We're
about to
running
run
low
out.
on juice.
But you guys, the key, and I'm going to put these guys on the spot in a way, since I got them and they can't go.
All right, let's see where we're going.
When it comes to cooperation, these two guys can get along great. The commissioners and across the board can get along great. But when it comes down to it, if we're going to really see a cooperative effort, it's going to have to filter all the way down to staff leadership and to staff employees. And there's just a natural tendency to protect your own area. And we get into that, and that's when we start to get into some friction. So I'm going to let you guys talk about how can you create a culture in your two organizations that cause a better working relationship between all of our staff, city, county, Dr. Traska, the same thing for you guys out at the college, the same thing with the school district. How do we get all of our folks to join in a common vision? And yeah, we each have our own areas, but how do we all work together? While they're talking about that, I got to go get a cord. But whoever wants to start, you jump in.
Well, the number one thing I would say is just like, kind of how, and I've seen you as a leader, you lead by example. Because I think when we show that we're all working together and we have our department heads in on those meetings and they see all of the thought formation and the thought process at the high levels working together, that it almost has a natural trickle-down effect. Because I know talking to Andy, who's your guys' fire county chief, and talking to our city fire chief, they said the last couple of months have been phenomenal working together. Right. And so I think, just a change in the overall leadership that we had on the city level, and then you brought in on the county level, if we all get along and we all work together and we show, we set a precedent and an example that we're on the same page and we're doing everything we can to try to kind of combine efforts, then it has somewhat of a natural trickle-down effect.
Well, I think that's right. I think it begins with perhaps education. Mm-hmm. And if we can, work together on, educating the people that, about this might work. Why don't you check into it? Let's try a little bit of this. it might work, but, this is mine and this is yours, and we're not separating, we've got to, economics don't dictate that we continue to do that.
Yep.
But I think it all starts with the education and
I agree.
the learning process, and then you go from there. And then, like you said, a lot of it has to do with leadership too.
Well, and that was, I actually had an item added to the joint agenda that kind of touched on that, because I was thinking, I work with Ada all the time. I'm on the board of the chamber with her. Love working with Ada. When I heard that you got the vacant spot, I was tickled pink, because I met you before I even got involved in it, and there was a lot of things that you had said to me whenever I was running that really kind of instilled themselves in my mind, and I always kind of looked up to you. And I get along with CJ great, and I'm getting to know Nathan, and I think Randy's the only one I've never met, and that's just because I've never been in the same place at the same time. But it's really exciting, and one of the things I started thinking when I had my agenda item was called departmental cooperation. One of the things that I'll be working on over the next couple months is, so all of our commissions get along now, right? Which is terrific. But I wanted to see if we could use some kind of software that was available on everybody's websites, and available to all the city staff, outside contractors, private sector entities, and everybody else, that would basically be an area that allows all of us to communicate on large projects for cost sharing and also for coordinating. So basically, if we're tearing up 2nd Street and the county has stuff that they need to do on 2nd Street as well, they'll be able to see, hey, City of Liberal's getting ready to tear this up, and they didn't even have to talk to the commissioners. It's the guys in the actual departments that do the work that see this. And then SBC from out of town has access to the same information. They get on there and say, hey, we can lay new fiber lines in the same part. And now you've combined 10 different things that normally would have had to tear up the road 10 different times into one project. All the taxing entities save money, and everybody's on the same page. And there's a couple pieces of software that I was kind of prospecting that would accomplish this. And obviously we would want it to be a very affordable solution. We don't want to suck a bunch of money out of the tax pool or anything like that. But to me, if we just had a way for everyone to be able to universally communicate about all ongoing projects without any kind of commission interference, it would create this environment where everybody is working together. Private sector contractors, city personnel, county personnel, and everybody else. And so hopefully we'll be able to come up with some kind of solution for that that's somewhat automated.
So there you go. You've heard it here. They met the other night. There seems to be a new spirit of cooperation happening in our community. We want to continue to foster that. One of the ways we're going to try to help is to just invite them to come talk to you. And that's why they were here today, and they both were willing to do that. So I'd like to say, Jim, thank you for coming in. Taylor, thanks for coming in.
Thank you very much for having me.
Appreciate seeing you guys. And
Jim, great to get to share the time with you, man.
So watch for more of these. Watch for more joint meetings and discussions. We're glad to share it. We're glad that they're willing to share it, and that's the key. So enjoy your weekend in Liberal, and we'll see you real soon.
Have an excellent weekend, guys. What did we clock in at?
Let's find out. And you can kill that one if you want, because I can cut that one.